Good morning sa inyong lahat. Ngayon po, gaya ng nakagawin ko, bibigyan ko ng konting lagom, konting summary, ang tatlong pagbasang narinig natin. In the first reading from the first book of Kings, we are presented with something that stares us in the face, the reality of wind, earthquake, and fire. Everywhere we go, we are beset by the equivalent of the wind, earthquake, and fire. And we think they are attractive enough for us to search for the ultimate. So God must be behind the powerful wind. God must be in the powerful bombs, the Kinzhal missiles that Putin is raining down upon civilians in the Ukraine. We want fire, and so the Kerch Bridge is once again on fire of just a scores of hours ago. But then we are brought by the book of Kings with the stark realization. Wala sa bongga ang Diyos, hindi ko mo bongga, bongacious ay nandiyan ang Panginoon. Wala sa hanging malakas, wala sa lindol, wala sa apoy. The Lord was in a tiny whispering sound. Very humbling realization that God is not behind powerful men. God is not behind power structures. God is not behind people who are exercising dominion, power, and influence. And definitely God is not behind the social media influencers who influence the young and disrespect God in the name of art. God is in a tiny whispering sound. And this is what Elijah learned early on in his life. In the second reading, Paul, in his letter to the Romans, describes you and me. I also. It talks about great sorrow. He talks about constant anguish. He makes some form of self-disclosure. As a counselor, we are familiar with this. We are not supposed to be disclosing our problems. Kung minsan may mga counseling na ganyan, inihikayat nilang ang counseling ang magsumbong sa kanila. Lalo na kung ang counselor ay mga pare who did not study counseling. So they spend 3 hours talking to one another. It's not counseling, it's consoling. Any counseling session that gets beyond 50 minutes is not a counseling session. It's a consoling session. And nobody is consoled. No one. So, in Paul's letter to the Romans, he had a little self-disclosure. I'm experiencing great sorrow in constant anguish. Why? Because God gave you everything He has. God gave you everything, and look at you. You're so indifferent. You're not responding rightly. This is a story of you and me. And God has sometimes a reason to, humanistically speaking, cry in sorrow for us because we're doing the same mistakes over and over again. We elect the same people. We elect the same parties who disrespect God. So the disrespect of God happening right now among social media influencers began in the churches where they turned them into entertainment. Liturgy became entertainment because they don't want serious faces like mine. They want to laugh, they want entertainment, they want a comedy session, they want stand-up comedy. And so, St. Paul was being honest, great sorrow and constant anguish because people are not responding rightly. In Matthew, the gospel we just heard, Matthew talks about real things. You go out to pass through the North Luzon Expressway in the midst of a typhoon, and coming back, you know that Bulacan is all flooded. So the North Luzon Expressway is all flooded from Santo Tomas all the way up to Balintawak. And that is where they're building an airport. They said they will raise the airport, but I don't know how they will raise all of Bulacan. So if it's flooded, how do you get to the elevated airport in Bulacan? The solutions of today are the problems of tomorrow. In our lack of systems thinking, the boat was tossed about by waves. And look at what the disciples, according to Matthew, experienced terror. They were afraid. And so they exclaimed when they saw the Lord coming to their rescue. "It is a ghost," they said, almost unanimous in declaring in social media, "May multong dumarating." It is a rash judgment. Until the Lord told them, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." So Peter, after realizing that the Lord was beside them, was at their side in their moment of terror, told and uttered a beautiful prayer that should be our prayer. "Command me to come to you in the water." And then the Lord said, "Come." And then he began to sink when he looked at the water, when his focus was no longer on the face of the Lord, and he focused on the dirty reality, the filthy reality of our secularized world. People not respecting God, people disregarding God, people hating clergy, people who are graduates of seminaries calling Pope Francis Bergoglio in their hatred for Pope Francis kasi hindi nagmimisa ng Latin. Dahilan lang sa napakababaw na dahilan na hindi nagmimisa ng Latin. So, Lord, save me. And this is the take-home thing that we should reflect on. We definitely live in a highly secularized world. There is a lot of disrespect for God. There is a lot of indifference to God. We see only waves and earthquakes and winds and fire. So Putin said he went to war in his narrative to denazify Ukraine. There are more neo-Nazis in Moscow than there are in Ukraine. And then the narrative didn't work. And so, with the help of Kirill, the patriarch of Moscow, the narrative became, we have to de-satanize Ukraine against the satanic West. And then it didn't work either, because nobody believes in these things anymore in a secularized world. So now they're changing the narrative. The West is out to destroy Russia. Changing narratives. This is the equivalent of the wind, the earthquake, and the fire of fakeries, of lies, of false narratives and fake news. And God is not there. God is not there. The Lord is in a tiny whispering sound. Too much noise. There is mistrust of all religions nowadays. Christopher Hitchens, together with somebody else whose name I forgot, says, the world will be better without religion. The world will be better according to them without religion. So, if the world were better without religion, then in vain is your coming here every Sunday. In vain is my standing up here to preside over Christian worship. The world would be better off without religion. This is the wind, the earthquake, and the fire, and the waves of irreligion, a sin against faith by defect. Deficiency. There is too much noise. The fire of misguided passion. We worry about so many things. The fire of false narratives and ideologies. The fire of hybrid warfare, using hunger as a weapon. Preventing the export of grain, hybrid warfare using fake migrants as a weapon, calling them from Syria and bringing them to Belarus, and then banging at the doors of Poland in order to get into the EU, the European Economic Community. Everything is weaponized, including holy things. So, when you have so much noise, what do we need to do? You did well by coming here this morning and coming to a period of silence, no matter how short. It's less than an hour. I seldom go beyond an hour in my masses unless there are too many announcements and second collections na walang katapusan sa Diocese ng Parañaque. Number 2, we can be distressed, we can be depressed. For God is silent. Truth to tell, the silence of God is something that distresses us. Where is God in all this? When you see pain, when you have been healthy all your life and you have been kind to everyone, you've been so busy at work because you're a very passionate worker. You're a passionate civil citizen of this country. And then all of a sudden, you wake up one fine morning, you have hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia. Where is God in all this? Why is God hiding? Why is God so silent? I have lived my life so well and helped so many people. And this is the constant anguish and the great sorrow of Paul, who was himself distressed and depressed. We are tossed up and about. The waves of terror, nowadays the tricycles, you don't know where is the real, yung himpilan ang stasyon. They're everywhere. There is no order. I'm not talking about Barangay Don Bosco. I'm talking about the whole country. Everywhere, kulang ang parking lot. Bakit? Kasi may isang garahe pero ang kotse 3. So saan nakapark? Sa kalye. And that is the problem everywhere I go. In Cebu, in Bohol, in Maasin, I'll be there tomorrow. Everywhere. In Palawan. In my hometown, I grew up seeing very few cars in Mendez. When I go there, lahat may kotse na, pero lahat nasa kalye. Walang parking. We are tossed up and about with so many problems. The disciples saw the wrong thing, and this is what faith is. The lack of faith, you see the wrong things. It is a ghost. The disciples had a momentary lapse of loss of faith. It is a ghost, and therefore if you see a ghost, you're terrified. But then God reveals himself in Christ. Take courage. It is I. Many years ago when I was young, there was a famous song by, nakakalimutan ko na naman, Simon and Garfunkel. Simon and Garfunkel. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. Why? Look at the noise. People talking without speaking. People hearing without listening. We are enveloped in noise. The noise of disbelief, the noise of irreligion, the noise of mistrust and distrust for God and for each other. And so we need to come down to quiet. We need the sound of silence. We need to welcome the silence in our hearts, in our person. Surround ourselves with the pregnant silence of the silent presence of a God who reveals himself ever so subtly, but powerfully. And the powerful revelation of God today is something I need. Take courage. It is I.